post, I'm going to reply to you today.
Yeah, Susan. I like having these discussions.
Yeah, thank you.
I missed yesterday. My phone failed me. I set an alarm, and it just did that was it. I didn't hear it.
Oh, okay.
So I missed last night. And I knew I had to catch it this morning.
All right, guys. I just want to say this is being recorded. The purpose for recording it is strictly for your fellow students who couldn't make it. So the access is restricted to students, but it is being recorded. I just want to let you know that. And just want to welcome everybody. This is the introductory hangout session for EMAN620 for both sections, 9040 and 9041. Between the two sections, we have 30 students, 15 each. The classes are identical in content. So we will be doing, for example, this is a joint activity. So we will be doing some joint activities, but in general, the classes will be kept separate per their section. Obviously, you have separate workspaces for each section. So for today's call, I want to do three things. I do have this PowerPoint here. And first thing I'm going to do, Angelique, I'm going to give you a job. Yesterday I had some quality issues with the connection. So I have moved downstairs. I'm now in my living room and my router is right behind me. But Angelique, when we're done this call, I'm going to ask you to tell me, to give me feedback on the quality of video and voice. And specifically, if I cut out either way, at the end I'll ask you what was the percentage that you couldn't hear me or couldn't see me, just so I have an idea of, you know, how I'm getting through to everybody.
Sounds good.
Okay. And if I do cut out and I come back, then let me know, because I don't know when you can't hear me. So just wave your hand or say, Professor, we can't hear, something like that. Okay. So I'm gonna get started. And first thing I'm going to do is share my screen. Okay, can everyone see my PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. See if I can get a full screen. And you can still hear me, right?
Yes.
Do you see my video, or you just hear me?
No.
We see you.
Oh, do you see the PowerPoint as well?
No.
No.
Okay, well, that I gotta fix. Let's try this.
One thing I will add is if you log back in, I noticed the audio is set to mute automatically, which I had trouble with. I just want to remind everyone.
Okay. Now
Thanks, William. Okay, PowerPoint, is my PowerPoint up?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to leave it like this. And you can read it? It's big enough to read?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let me try one more thing. Still up?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So I'm in the presentation mode. And do you see my video now? Or just
Yes.
just the PowerPoint?
Just forward.
Okay, as long as you can hear me. So I'm going to go through three things. Do introductions, which we already sort of did. A few comments on the course, and then I'm going to get into your first lesson in this class, which is a very brief lecture on conference calls and disasters. So let me get started. Let me switch out of this mode and go back. So again, just a quick introduction. Angelique, Carlene, Tanya, and William. Is there anyone else on the line who wants to identify themselves? No. Okay, good. So we're going to get started again. Back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so the course, I'm going to give you a little history of this course. This course was designed about 6 years ago by a gentleman named Keith Robitree. Keith is a colleague of mine. He is a senior level employee of American Red Cross. I think he's been there almost 20 years. He was formerly chief of IT, formerly chief of logistics, and currently he serves on one of the FEMA IMAT teams, which is their national response coordination team. And he designed it 6 years ago. I taught it 5 times, and then I redesigned it this summer. So this is the first time that you guys are getting the benefit of a redesign. And that's good because it's an IT class and a lot of things need to be updated. And I've changed a lot of things. I am using a lot of new techniques, a lot of new technologies. I think someone logged in. I just want to make sure I didn't. We have one more guest. Silviero, can you hear us? Okay, well, he's trying to get in when I hear that beep. So, I continue. I am. Hey, Silviero, are you here?
Yeah.
Hey, how are you? You're on mute. Silviero, you're on mute. Take your phone off mute.
I just
Okay.
fixed it.
Okay.
Hear me now?
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
I just started, so I'm going to continue. Okay, PowerPoint is back.
No.
Okay. So yeah. So again, this is exactly why we're doing this now, to work out all these bugs. So when we do it later in the semester, it'll be smooth and flawless. Okay, PowerPoint.
Yes.
Okay, thanks guys. I appreciate your patience and all this. Okay, so again, yeah, so I redesigned the class this summer. I've taught it 5 times, and I'm teaching it again. So yeah, I ask for your patience, trying new things out. It's definitely going to make the course better, but using this as an example, there's going to be a little, learning period. So I use a lot of non-traditional UMUC techniques, as you'll get familiar through the semester. I'm trying to use Hangouts a lot. I might experiment with some other systems. WebEx is one, but I like Hangouts because it's free, and I find it pretty good quality. Then the timing of these, I'm going to try and do always, if there's a live event, I'll do 2, one at night and one in the morning, Eastern time. And I'm really trying to catch everybody to give them an opportunity. Furthermore, if you can't attend, I will be recording these, so you'll have the opportunity to watch it at a later time. But obviously, I prefer to see you guys in person and live. It's a much better way to interact. So I'm just going to get into the mini lecture of conference calls. You guys see the picture?
Yes, sir.
This is the old school conference. This, I believe, is the first conference call ever. So as you can see, the guy had 2 telephones in both ears. He'd hear something from one person, and then he'd have to say it, and then the other person would hear it too. So clearly, we've moved a lot since then. This is the today's conference call image. What you're seeing is the conference room of the FEMA National Response Coordination Center at FEMA headquarters in Washington, D.C. It's a room that I have spent hundreds of hours of my life over my 12-year career at the Corps of Engineers. I spent many disasters as a liaison to FEMA headquarters, and this is their fancy conference room. It's high tech. You don't see there's a back room that has all the equipment and has a couple operators. The screen that you see is actually probably 8 different screens, and each screen they can control separately, so they can have one, they can tie them all together. So as you see, they're having a meeting with a regional office. They can have PowerPoints and video and live feeds coming all at the same time. There's microphones and speakers built in everywhere. They have the ability to cut people off if they have an open mic. But yeah, it's high tech, it's cool, and this is used with FEMA. I can tell you that President Bush has been in this room several times. President Obama has been in this room several times. Many cabinet members, many high-level people. and many staff members. There's probably about 40 seats behind where this picture was taken, and another 20 or 30 around. So there's your main table, and then you have all the staffers sitting around the sides. But again, this is a high-tech system. You could tie in anyone around the world. There was a whole staff that managed this room specifically and managed the IT just to communicate, to connect people. And it worked well, but there's always still problems. So we'll talk about that. So again, just want to talk a few things in general. I call it conference call and disasters. We all know that emergency management has multiple cycles: preparedness, response, recovery, mitigation. So what I'm talking about now is in the response phase. I'm sure everyone here has experience on a conference call for meetings and whatnot, but it changes in a disaster. Everything changes in a disaster. The sense of urgency is higher, the stress level is higher, the amount of people involved is higher, and the amount of time you have is usually less. So again, what I'm talking about is conference calls and disasters, not conference calls in general. However, obviously there's a lot of overlap between the two. Size, your conference calls in a disaster can get really big, really quick. They can be small, but those FEMA ones, for example, that I showed you the picture of that room, it wouldn't be atypical to have 200-300 people on those. They usually have a voice only or a listen only line, so you can't actually speak. So you can dial in. They have a VTC option for video, and then they have a audio where you can speak. So a lot of those 200 people can't say anything, but they listen in, and they get quite big. So just think that they can even get bigger than a couple hundred. A battle rhythm is a very important concept. Battle rhythm, if anyone here's active duty currently or former, they know what this is. Battle rhythm, I got a little, do you guys see my mouse when I move it?
No.
Okay.
No.
So in the upper right corner, there's a box that says daily battle rhythm. So that's what I'm pointing to with my mouse. And I just made this up real quick.
Yeah.
It's basically your schedule of the day with your major meetings. So you can see you got a shift change meeting at 6. Morning brief, your inputs for the morning brief are due at 7. A morning synchronization call at 9. So on and so forth. And then maybe specific calls later. But, in any response, you're going to have multiple calls, throughout the day. And that's usually called your battle rhythm. So it's always important to understand what your battle rhythm is so you can prepare for these calls and meetings and whatnot. The different types of conference calls, inter-organizational. For example, FEMA is an inter-organizational agency. Their whole purpose is to coordinate amongst multiple agencies. So in that type of call, you're going to have a lot of people who don't know each other, maybe working together for the first time. You don't even know their names, you just know their organization. Then you have organization only. That's kind of intra-organization. And I make the distinction because in an inter-organizational, again, you might not know the people. So if it's only your organization, you're free to speak more freely, and there's more of a relationship. So there is a different feel to those calls. And then there's specific calls, operational calls or logistics calls that are specific to one topic. So keep in mind there's various types of conference calls that happen all the time. And some of them are spontaneous. Not, you do have planned ones, but you have to have the ability to have spontaneous ones, which is very important. If there's an issue and you need to get 3 people on the phone right away, then you have to do it. In the bottom right, you see the picture of the little icon with 2 phones. I just want to point out that's a very good technique. If you don't have a system in place, you can always take 2 phones and put them on speaker, and it works. I've done it many times. It's not the best quality, but you can get several people in a conference call together simply by doing that. I got 2 more slides, and then we're going to just wrap it up. And they're just do's and don'ts based on my experience on conference calls. So I'm going to go through the do's first. Very important, redundancy. Have a backup system or a backup method in place. when I was at the Corps of Engineers, we first started, we had a manual system, which was an old school physical box with buttons and lights, and each box had a specific phone number, and everyone would call into that phone number, and then you could tie them in physically. And that was in the late 90s, early 2000s, and that box was terrible because it would always break down, and you physically had to push these buttons. Obviously now we have a lot of digital systems. You can use, there's some free systems out there. 1-800-conferencecall.com is one, and there's many other. But you always want a backup system. I don't care what it is or what it looks like, but you need an alternate way to communicate as a group. You know, as a theme in this class, we're going to talk about what happens when the internet goes down, and we don't stop our jobs because we don't have connectivity. No, we actually have to make sure that we can continue seamlessly if we have connectivity or not. So redundancy is very important. Have a backup way to do it, and there's multiple ways. Roll call is always good to introduce. You want to know who's on the call for various reasons, but usually a good idea for bigger calls, have people call in 5 minutes, 10 minutes early, and 5 minutes before do the roll call, so you're not wasting the first 15 minutes just figuring out who's on the line. Agenda and a leader, you always want some sort of agenda if you can. It might not have to be written, but you should have some kind of leader. It's really more of a facilitator who at the beginning of the call should just point out, here are the bullet points of what we're going to do, here's our goal, and that helps to keep it on target and keep it as short as possible. If you are, say, in the field and you have to brief up to your headquarters, I highly suggest you prepare your remarks ahead of time. These conference calls get big, and if you have high-level people, you might get some stage fright. So make sure you know what you're going to say before, and just write on your notebook your 3 or 4 bullets. And again, keep it succinct. 3 or 4 bullets. If you have like 10 bullets, something's wrong. Just write those down as guides to what you want to talk about, because once you start talking, sometimes you get caught in the moment and you lose focus on what you wanted to talk about, and you might get overwhelmed or stage fright, like I said. Summarize, always, summaries is what we want to hear on conference calls. We don't want to go into too many details. And you want to highlight changes and trends. And what I mean by that is you got to always put things in context, right? If I get on a conference call and I say, hey, we had 100 trucks delivered today, there's no context to that. 100 trucks could be a lot, it could be a little. If we need 1,000 trucks of water, for example, 100 trucks is nothing. If we need 5 trucks, and 10 trucks is plenty, or whatever. So I always put things in context, and trends are good. So you could say, well, yesterday we had 10 trucks, and today we have 50 trucks. So clearly something changed between yesterday and today. So it's very important to put things in context in a very brief, succinct way to make people understand what you're trying to tell them. If you want to show improvement, then you would structure what you say to show that. Again, be succinct. I've said that many times. Factual. Don't make shit up. This is very important. This is a common mistake. I've been guilty of this. Again, you get on these calls and you might be talking to a very high-level person or whatever, and you get nervous and there's a desire to make things sound good, or not to say I don't know. But do not do that. As a rule, fundamental rule, if you don't know if you don't know the answer, just say I don't know. That's perfectly acceptable, and that's way better than making stuff up or rambling or going off topic. So don't make shit up. Take things offline if you have to. Obviously not everything needs to be discussed with a large group. Sometimes you can just identify the issue and say, hey, let's take it offline. And then with a smaller group after the call or later, you can discuss that issue. And then lastly, make sure you do end before the next conference call starts. And that, I say that half jokingly, but there's several times where I've been on conference calls and they went so long that we had to say, hey guys, we got to end this call because our next call is scheduled. So clearly, you don't want that to happen. So make sure you end it, as if you have a schedule, try and stick to it. Don't read a sit rep, a situation report word for word or anything like that. That would cause you a lot of embarrassment. Don't do that. Usually, if the other participants have your report written, they'll be reading it before and during the call, so you absolutely don't need to read it for them. Everyone can read on their own. Yeah, go ahead.
What is sit rep?
Sit rep is a situation report. It's a sort. So it's basically a basic, it's a status report. You know, it can be, there's, you know, in my experience, sit rep was a daily thing. At the end of the day, everyone would do a sit rep. If something happened during the day that was critical for people to know, we would do what's called a spot rep, so a spot report. So situation report is very common in emergency management. But again, it's a report. It's a status report. Next, don't say anything that you wouldn't mind seeing on CNN. This is another very important thing. The same goes with email too, and I tell everybody with email, don't put anything on email that you wouldn't mind seeing on the national or local news and you can't defend. If you work in the public sector for the government, keep in mind that all your records are public record that can be subject to subpoena, investigation, and whatnot. So keep everything professional. That doesn't mean you have to censor and not say what you want to say, but there's always a way to say something professionally and respectfully. For example, those big FEMA calls, and you saw that room, I guarantee, I know for a fact that in those big calls during big disasters that would have, you know, hundreds of people, including maybe the secretary, the cabinet level, DHS guy, the head of FEMA, that the news media would somehow get the numbers and they would be listening in. And I know that because we would turn on CNN later and they knew things that we just said on the call. So always keep that in mind. You never know who's on your call. There might be a lot of people listening in. So, you know, watch what you say. Don't repeat or pontificate. Say things once. I'm guilty of repeating a lot. It comes from my teaching. Repeating is a technique to really hammer in the important things to students. And that's great for lecturing. But when you're on a conference call, you know, say things once. And don't pontificate, you know, don't go on don't start speculating or dreaming up wild and crazy ideas. You know, be very succinct in what you say, talk about facts, talk about things that you know, and, you know, don't sit there and daydream out loud. And then the last thing I'm going to say is don't forget to turn your mute on. I know there's been many situations where people think that their microphone is off and everybody in the world hears them. You know, they might be bashing someone on the other. They might be criticizing their boss or whatever, or making fun of someone, or just acting silly. Or they might be at home and, you know, their dog is coming and they're feeding them or something like that. So make sure you're mute. You understand how to use your mute. And when you need to, you mute your phone. And when you don't need to, you unmute it. But yeah, you don't want to be caught in a very embarrassing situation where you're talking and everybody hears you. So that is my lecture. I'm going to stop the screen share. And we're right at 9:30. So again, always try and keep it as succinct as possible. Keep to your schedule, so on and so forth. But that, you know, again, that are my thoughts on, you know, disaster conference calls. You know, what is the point of a disaster conference call? You know, it's for coordination, it's for updating, so on and so forth. But, you know, at the same time, you got to realize that a lot of communication happens outside of the call. So you'll learn as you get into this business on what is appropriate for a large group and what is not appropriate, you know, that needs to be taken quote unquote offline. So you'll learn that, and if you are in this industry long enough for business, you're going to be part of many, many different conference calls. So lastly, I do want to open it up to questions.
So is this going to happen every Thursday night and Friday morning?
No, this is not going to happen every Thursday, Friday. You'll find out through this class, I like to change things up a lot. I'm not a routine where everything is the same all the time. There's going to be about 4 times throughout the semester where I'm going to have a lecture on a topic. You know, we have 12 weeks, so I'm only picking 4 weeks where I'm going to do additional lecture on the topic. There are going to be some other opportunities where you're going to have small group discussions, and I don't really specify how you do it, but I encourage Google Hangouts because you can get a lot done quickly in a short amount of time. And then for the final project, you're going to have a final brief out to me. So to answer your question, no, this will not be every week. I will let you know in plenty advance, and I'll always offer 2 times and record the session. So there'll be no excuse for you not to see it as something. Obviously I prefer live if you can do it, but if you can't do it, then you can watch the recording.
So, did you just say for our final we have to give you a brief?
Yes. Yeah, your group is you're gonna write your paper, and then it's usually a 15-minute brief. I don't require PowerPoints if you want to do a PowerPoint, but you got to brief me your topic, and we invite everyone in the class. So I might have questions, or your classmates might have questions, and so yeah. Anyone else? Any questions?
It has to be 15 minutes, the brief, like going through this.
It's 15 minutes. I mean, I guess do you have a little stage fright? Is that the issue, or?
No, it's not that. It's just, I don't really talk for 15 minutes. I kind of get to the point 3 minutes.
That's fine. I give you up to 15 minutes, and yeah, if you can get your point across in 3 minutes, that's awesome. And again, it's a group thing, so I'm not saying you necessarily have to speak. One person from your group will have to speak, but it's not necessary that it'll be you.
Yeah. Is it too early to ask what is going to be in the group project? What it is going to be about?
Sure, I can tell you. It's a general project. You'll have a group of 5 people, and I don't specify. I'll give you some ideas if you like, but the guidance is basically is find a problem in the field of emergency management or homeland security related to IT and come up with a solution. So the way I do it, I give you a couple milestones. So once I assign the project, I give you 2 weeks to get me a topic, and I approve that. And then I give you another 2 weeks to give me an outline. I approve that. And then 3 or 4 weeks later is your final project. So it's not like I just tell you and come back to me at the end of the semester. We work together through the semester to refine your product. But the topic is open. I'm happy to give you topics and make suggestions, but it's up to the group to decide.
Sounds fair.
All right, I'm going to ask anyone else have any last questions? If not, we are going to end 5 minutes late, but that's not too bad. Another lesson, people are happy when conference calls don't go forever, so I try and keep everybody happy. So any last call for questions?
One for me.
Go ahead.
When you say take things offline, is that similar to a working group, or are we talking something different?
Yeah. What I mean is, okay, if you have a call with your whole organization and there's 50 people on the call, and we're trying to coordinate the delivery of something, not all 50 people, I would go on and say, hey, I'm having an issue with the scheduling and coordination of this generator, for example. The person on the other end would say, yeah, I got it, let's talk offline. So the point is, you don't need to talk all those details on the big call. You would just say, okay, let's talk offline, and maybe right after the call, I would call that person who's the other end of the coordination and deal with them like one-on-one, or maybe we would have to have a smaller call with 3 or 4 people. But offline just means away from the big group.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, last call. Any questions? Okay, none heard. So you guys all have a good day. Last thing I'll say is reach out to me, phone, email, text, whatever, and I'm always happy to talk one-on-one with everyone. So good luck. Enjoy seeing all of your faces, and really, I really like teaching, so look forward to this. Okay, bye guys.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. Same.